Hey guys, it's me, EODGamer here, and today we'll be covering the top 5 most popular Spiral Abyss teams of version 2.6. Generally, Hydro and Cryo are the best elements for this rotation because of the shielded enemies, but I've included some ways to get around this too. Without wasting any time, let's get on with number 5. In number 5, we have a double Cryo Kokomi Freeze team for the second half. The second half is generally the harder of the two halves this rotation because of the triple Abyss Heralds and the double Hydro Lectors in the final chamber. Cryo is the best element to tackle all 3 Heralds' shields and also settle the final chamber well, and is the recommended way, I would say, of approaching this Abyss. For those without Ganyu or Ayaka, this first comm is a great way of tackling the second half. Kokomi allows us to run 2 offensive Cryo units like Rosaria or Kea that have far greater Cryo application compared to a defensive Cryo unit like Diamond. Of course, for the Cryo characters, you could swap in Ayaka and Ganyu and Shenhe if you have sufficient battery, but I kept the display simple for people without them. For Hydro, Kokomi can be swapped for Mona or even Barbara for a quick swap freeze, or Xingqiu if you're mixing in some auto attacks as well. You want to play crowd control or grouping character for this rotation, so Venti or Kazuha could swap in quite nicely for Sucrose too. In terms of stats gearing, you want to ensure that your rotations are smooth and that you will be able to apply as much Cryo and Hydro as possible, and would prioritize greater uptime in terms of solid energy gain over a few crit damage more for this comp.
Cool it. Oh, so sorry.
Allow me. Judgment.
Number 4. Childe International Team. This team is used in the first half and works well as a pair if you're planning to run a freeze variation in the second half. Although running double Pyro into the 2 Pyro Abyss Lectors might seem inefficient at first, the damage that they provide, together with the Anemo shredding and buffing, makes up for the lost time in running a single Hydro to take down the shields. Childe does very good burst damage and excels in the first half. Ayato also fills in relatively well in this comp, as the clip above shows. For the Pyro units, Bennett and Xiangling duo works well here, and either Sucrose, Venti or Kazuha fills the last spot nicely. This team addresses the first half well and pairs nicely for a second half with Freeze. The only issue is you likely need 2 Anemo characters with crowd control, which some of you might not have. Later in this video, we'll talk about an option if you don't want to run Anemo in one side, because you only have one Anemo crowd control build.
I must remain calm, one with nature.
Get them.
Number 3 is a Taser comp consisting of double Electro, Hydro, and Anemo. In my opinion, this is the most efficient way of solving this Abyss first half, since the team uses more transformative reactions and has better energy regen from Fischl and a double Electro comp. All 4 members tackle the Pyro shields well too, and this comp feels very smooth to play. In terms of variation, I prefer Kokomi in this comp since we lack of an Electro healer. Ayato, Mona or Childe is still possible, but you lose some crowd control, having to run a healer that's Anemo instead. Barbara works well in this first slot and could be a great Thrilling Tales user for Beidou as well. I highly recommend this comp and is pretty free to play friendly since it doesn't rely on 5-star weapons or 5-star characters for the most part.
Midnight Phantasmagoria.
Think you can get away? Allow me. Back off. Eyes on me. Torrent, bring refuge.
In second place, we have the Morgana team. His name was originally taken from parts of Mona, Ganyu and Diana's name, and slapping the last slot with Venti. This meta team has not been extremely rampant recently due to a large amounts of mobs that can't be crowd controlled by Venti in the last few rotations. Venti is extremely pivotal in this comp as he supplies energy, shreds, and has unparalleled crowd control and also very low field time. When Venti is meta, chances are so is Morgana. No surprises here that this comp is in number 2 and handles the second half extremely well. In terms of variations, Ayaka can be swapped in for Ganyu, and Kokomi can be rotated in for Mona, allowing you to run an offensive Cryo character with more Cryo application. The key thing to note is that by removing Diana usually leads to some ER issues for your main Cryo DPS, but Venti and some ER gear should offset this significantly. The key downside of this team is that it's very expensive to run, requiring 2 to 3 limited 5-star characters. For those without Venti, Ganyi, or Ayaka, the double freeze team in number 5 will be a much more relatable team. Before we get to number 1, I thought of sharing an honourable mention since quite a few people with hutao wish to play her here in this rotation still. The secret lies in the 3rd slot. Normally albedo fills that slot for a double Geo hutao xingqiu combo, but for this rotation, Chongyun is the perfect pick. He doesn't even need good gear and could work well with even a level 1 weapon. Hutao, if well geared, addresses everything well in the second half except for the Pyro Lecter shields and to some extent the Hydro Abyss Lecter shields. Xingqiu solves the Pyro shields portion and Chongyun is the best answer to the Hydro shields for this team, since Hutao applies Cryo with the infusion and is able to use her elemental skill to vaporize without the infusion. For those who want to play Hutao in this Abyss, I find it more effective running this team in the second half, especially with Chongyun's C2 which lowers team cooldowns and his Ascension bonus which increases attack speed. Slap on some HP artifacts on your underleveled Chongyun and you are pretty much good to go.
Solidify! One with my blade! Order guide you! Force my blade! From whence you came!
Not good. Let me read you a verse. Rain outlines.
Gather! One with my blade! Solidify!
No surprises who ranks in number 1. The Eternal Raiden National. Although I will agree it's not the best way to tackle the first half, and many other teams do it better. But this team has shown consistency in its performance across patches since Raiden's release. Cheap to build, and most players tend to like pulling Archons, this team also is my top recommendation to any player currently wanting to progress further into the Abyss. The key downside of this team is that it takes away Xingqiu from a Pyro main DPS, but allows you to play just one Anemo character in 2 halves of the Abyss, opening a double freeze team for the second half. Some people have also tried in this rotation switching out Xiangling for Venti to trade Pyro damage for stronger crowd control, and that works excellently, but is of course much more expensive to run than a single 5-star comp. Solid team, and is the meta across patches thus far. But of course, a useful thing to note is that this team begins to show some sign of weakness when there are many Pyro immune enemies. Nothing major for now, but it's an interesting observation for the future. Check back in 2.7 to see how the popular teams change. Till then, you might like these 2 videos here, especially the tier list video. See you in the next video.